please remember that corporate governance has to do with performance. And what we're beginning to talk about today is what does the structural ideas which are promulgated by the rating agencies have to do with performance. And this is not an attack on the agencies, either ISS or GMI or anybody else. We know that the information that they provide is useful. The question is, useful for what? Useful to people who think about it, but useful to predict performance? We don't think so. At least I don't think so. I don't think a good grade from the people who give you grades necessarily predicts that you're going to get good performance. So the structural information that they provide you, which will be useful for other purposes, does not predict performance. That's the point we're making today, period, exclamation point. What we tried to do was to see whether or not it would be possible to boil all these best practices down to something useful. If you look at all the guidelines, you could boil it down to a few principles, and that's what we did. Let me just give you the headlines of the 10 principles which we think boards can take into account as they tailor their own processes. The principles are that the board itself is responsible for governance, transparency, director compensation and commitment, board accountability and objectivity, independent boards, integrity, ethics, and responsibility, board attention to information, its agenda and strategy, avoiding entrenchment, encouraging shareholder information in terms of director selection, and communication with shareholders. They seem rather obvious. These are the 7 or 10 principles around which boards, if they study, can do their own homework, create their own processes, and, we would say, advise their shareholders as to what they're doing. And we believe that if they do that diligently and project out what they've done to their shareholders who will be educated as well on what's going on, will take it into account. And by the way, if they wish to, they can take these principles that they've evolved, the processes they've evolved, and compare it to one of the rating agencies and say, this is why we didn't do it. We didn't take points X, Y, and Z because we didn't think it was useful. So these principles are all designed to make the board think about 10 things that create good governance according to everybody and see whether or not they can't develop their own. The process is one of increasing professionalism in the boardroom by asking the board to sit down and think about these principles and then design its own course of action.